guess the thing is that there's going to be challenges, how you address and deal with those challenges, and then just staying communicative, honest, and open lines of communication with all parties and using your resources to make it right, to figure it out.
Welcome to Superpower with Kristine Milkovich, the podcast where we help you unleash your inner hero. Whether you're a change maker, a trailblazer, or just looking to level up, this is the space to uncover your unique superpower and transform it into unstoppable momentum. Join me as we dive deep with inspiring guests, sharing their game-changing insights, empowering us all to be the hero of our own stories. Get ready to embrace your deepest purpose, own your power, and change the world one bold move at a time. Welcome to this week's episode. Dawn Crownover with CMG Home Loans, right here in our Greater Puget Sound area. She is taking such incredible care of clients that are looking to get funding, to get on the pathway to invest in real estate, to start their journey with their own financial legacies. And there are so many intricate moving parts. And without the expertise, the guidance, the coaching, and just the direction from Dawn, it can be a very, very confusing lane to go down. So buckle up, tune in, and enjoy this episode with our preferred lender, Dawn Crownover. Today's special guest is actually also my preferred lender in my professional real estate world. So this is a true honor and a privilege. We talk often. We are in relationship, we're in community. We get to also have some great fun together, also with my sister Lisa. But this is going to be a really fun day in the studio to talk a little bit deeper about Dawn's career background, kind of how she got in the whole lending lane, and just taking some of her wisdom and her inspiration and all the many ways that she helps folks with the biggest purchase of their entire life. So let's get to it. Welcome to the show, Dawn.
Thanks for having me, Christine.
This is fun. We get to hang out in a whole nother capacity here, right?
Whole
This will
new
be a
world.
great.
You're in your element.
Oh, well, you're in your element every day, and we are so grateful for that. The next 40-45 minutes, I do have a couple questions, but this is what I say to every guest. We're just here chatting. We're talking about just real life good stuff. And there is just so much comfort in that, and some of the things that light us up and inspire us, because there's a good chance the things that we are working on or have uncovered or are struggling with is also something our audience connects to. And that's really the whole point of Superpower. So again, thank you for your time. I know you could be doing lots of other things and getting back to a client as soon as this is over. So I appreciate your time this morning.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So for those that tune into this episode that don't know Dawn Crownover or have not worked with you, or when we're going to get to all the ways that you're an advocate and a supporter of lots of community organizations, we're going to get to that in the show. But if folks just don't know you from those lanes yet, how tell us a little bit about your background, the company you work for, and did you get out of college and say, I'm going to get into the funding lending world, which many people do, but I'd just be curious for the audience. And I know you've told me, but I'd love to hear it for the second time, just kind of how you jumped into being in the financial lane and into the lender lane.
Well, I lucked in, or I accidentally stumbled in. And I think fate, dictates what we're meant to do a lot of times. Not to bore everybody, but I'm definitely going to date myself. When I went to college, undergrad, I thought I was going to go to law school. And when I was applying to law schools, I had some come to Jesus kind of proverbial moments with some mentors who had JD degrees. And I had aspirations of helping battered women and families and things that where I was passionate about in school. And then I was told that I would never be able to pay my rent, let alone buy a house. So I better rethink that strategy, unless I wanted to be in corporate law, which I decided it wasn't the journey for me. And then I graduated and literally did, if I'm allowed to say this, and oh shit. It's like,
No, yeah.
what
We
do
got
I
we
what do I do now? I needed to find a job and I needed to figure out if I was going to grad school or what. And in the process, there weren't a lot of jobs. It was the late 80s. We were coming out of the S&L crisis, and a lot of people had been laid off that had been in their careers for 3 to 5 years and already had master's degrees. And at that time, they were taking all of the entry level jobs that I would have otherwise qualified for. So I happened, and to make a long story short, to connect with one of the only women managers in finance in a division where I went to undergrad in Ohio. And she really liked me. And although she already had two male assistant managers, she said, I think you would be great here. We'd like to give you an opportunity, of course, paying you almost nothing. But she opened the door for me like someone had done for her in an all male world, and it was very male dominated at the time. And she gave me the opportunity, and I took to lending like a fish to water. Turns out I had an aptitude for numbers. I loved people. I
Mhm.
love to talk. I connect. I get passionate and make connections with people to build relationships, which is the cornerstone of, what we do. And she gave me the opportunity, and within 6 months she was taking a maternity leave, and the other two male managers had assistants had been there for a couple years, and she chose me to replace her in her office while
Oh,
she was on maternity leave. And then that began a finance journey in a corporate world where I was solely focused on how far, how up could I move, because I thought that's how you made more money. And, the level of title was success and all these things. And that's how I got into the business.
wow. Wow, I love that. So somebody identifying those special sauces, I like to say, those special particles in you, and what an honor and a compliment to be somebody's backfill. I mean, that's great, right? That had to felt good, especially at a young age, no?
I'll always be grateful to Andrea Wilson, who
I
opened
love
that,
that. Shout
who
out to
maybe
Andrea.
opened that door for me, but I don't know. She pushed me in, and
Yeah.
I've been here ever since, in various manifestations, but it just built from there. And I've never been able to leave the industry. I did go on to get a graduate degree, working full time while getting it in the evenings, and yeah.
Good for you. Well, you said a couple things too that we've talked about often with other guests on the show. And one of them is walking into, at any age, but certainly coming of age, right? Maybe a 20 something to frame it, walking into a very male centered, very male focused industry. So go a little deeper on that. Certainly at that time in your youth, but perhaps even, I know the tides are slowly shifting and we have a lot of fierce boss ladies like yourself in lending and in finance, but go a little deeper on just like how did you navigate that, or what are some lessons that you took from it that you sprinkle into your daily life, or how have you maybe used that to talk to your beautiful daughter, the human, one of the two humans you're raising up in this world, to be a part of it all. So go any kind of just takeaways or stories or even a memory that you have from that, because I think that's so
Sure.
powerful and important.
Well, I don't want to be the history books where, I just chose a male dominated profession. It is now very female forward, and the journey has ended with high leadership of women that I respect, I value, I honor, I cherish, they support. But it has been a tough road for a lot of women, and I'm not in management anymore, and I don't need to be in management. As you said, I have a family, and a balanced life is more important to me than traveling
Mhm.
all over and not being home. But it was a tough journey, I'm not going to lie. There was a lot of prejudice. I took a promotion from that start after being at my first job. And then when Andrea came back from her maternity leave, I'd been the boss, so I couldn't go backwards. So she recommended me for promotion, and that meant I had to leave the state. That sent me on another path of commitment for a couple of years, worked out well for me. But, I went into another state where I was the only woman manager, where she was the only woman manager in Ohio. I went to Indiana for a promotion. I was the only woman manager. I was the most educated manager, and it was a good old boys network. And so, no one was ever mean to me or disrespected me, but it's just a different journey to be on as a woman and be a, powerful woman. And I hate to use that word, but a strong woman or opinionated woman. And then forget about the whole interpersonal levels of things that you're coming to terms with as, in your 20s, and not being in a place that advocates for that or allows you to grow into who your true self is. So that's a whole nother level of the journey.
Mhm.
But luckily, how I ended up on the West Coast, again, another good ending to a story, is I had met the regional manager for the company I was working for of the West Coast, who I'm still friends with his son and his daughter-in-law. He just recently passed away, Mr.
Mhm.
Evans, and he just loved me and he was a great guy. And he said, if you ever want to come to the West Coast, I've got a place for you. So when I finished my commitment on the East Coast, I called him up right before the tenure was ending and I was finishing that graduate program. And I said, I got to get out of here. I've got friends there. They've moved there. I want to come. And
Mm.
he and I, through the back door, going against corporate policy, he may have even gotten in trouble for this.
I
I,
like him already.
I got out here to the West Coast and had to take another demotion to get re-promoted. Worked for another woman and then was able to get my own office. And then that's what got me to the West Coast. And at
Okay.
the end of that journey is that I went on to work for that company for years and then transitioned from retail lending into wholesale lending, not to bore you, and then other iterations into where I am back in retail now and have
Mm.
been for many, many, many years, just on a long journey. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, but
Well, I was just gonna say, I think there's a couple really important life messages in what you just shared is I think we can all think back on someone. I can think of a list, and it sounds like you are so fortunate as well, of people that just have poured into us. It could be somebody that you worked with, worked for, a mentor, a dear friend. And that's such a wonderful thing to be able to recapture that story and give honor to those people. And the other one is you said yes. Right? There's a lot of
I
fear
think a lot of
and
this,
there's a
a
lot
lot
of
of this,
fear
yeah.
that could come from leaving your comfort zone and heading out west and kind of forging a new territory, no pun intended, but that takes a lot of courage and a lot of faith. And I'm sure that's sharpened who you are, obviously, today. So that's really cool to share that. Appreciate that transparency.
Hmm.
What are I know them because I have the great fortune of partnering with you, working with you, and you have taken exceptional care with great handholding and skill of multiple countless clients at the Milkovich team. And I can't sing your praises enough on what you bring to the table in your professional lane. However, what do you think are some of the unique strengths or points of difference that you bring to your profession and your clientele and certainly the realtor partners that choose to partner with you, Dawn? I'd love to hear that from your voice.
Well, I think it comes to the core of who you are. And one of the key tenets of what I believe and what I've built in my career is that we're building clients for life. We're building relationships for life. We're not transactional. I have a
Mhm.
client right now that I've worked with for 5 years and just informed me
Mhm.
today after 7 months in a new construction project that he's probably going to walk from it because the builder's not living up to their end. So we're relationship and not transactional.
Yeah.
So, what in our industry, things people I think have a perception that they can just click a few buttons and get that information because information is so readily available in our, digital world, in our technologically advanced world, right? But there's such a huge interpersonal connection and component that goes into what we do because every human being, every family, every individual situation may be slightly different and their needs might be different. Their wants might be different. Their qualifications might be different than just data in, data out of a computer. And you really need to take the time to get to know what each individual needs to meet those needs on an interpersonal level to help guide them, in my professional opinion, through, one of the biggest decisions they're going to make in their life, and certainly the largest financial decision they're going to make in their life next to having kids, because we all know that that's a money pit that never ends for parents. But I think that's the key difference. I never look at any client of, oh, let's just get this done.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
we start with the intention and the directions that, hey, not only am I here for you now, I am here for you after you close. And any inane, you think stupid, I don't think stupid, I think stupid for not asking question or
Yeah.
consuming information you need. My team and I are going to be there for you as a resource. You're not alone. You're not out there hanging by yourself. And, we want to do such a good job that we earn your referrals to your sphere of influence, to your family, your friends, your coworkers, and we want you to come back to us with your future needs. And we're going to be looking out, for those as well. So that's the key to longevity, right? Is the grace and the connections that you make with the people that you've helped and their belief and support in you and passing it on and paying it forward to connect you with other people that need your service and your help, and you build those relationships with them as well.
Yeah. Nice. Very well said and very thoughtful and on purpose. Like you said, you're not just like wheeling and dealing, chucking and jiving. Like this is people's hearts, it's their souls, it's their family, it's multi-generational family planning, it's death, it's marriage, it's babies, right? I mean, it like
It's sports,
it's
it's
seeing
everything.
life in motion at every phase. And the relatable side of me being in real estate sales is I can certainly relate to that. Those are just such privileges to be a part of those stories with people. So let me ask you, because I've been in these shoes as a consumer. So I want to hear how you coach and manage and help your clients get on the train to get to the financial goal. What if someone's in your office or on a Zoom with you, or you meet them for coffee, wherever you're conducting, let's say, an interview or getting a potential hire from a new client, or you're talking to a broker, a real estate broker, and the client that needs the funding just isn't quite ready. They just don't quite yet have the chops. They don't quite have yet the money down for the programs available. Maybe their credit score is all wonky and messed up from a screw up at 23 or at 45, whatever. And they're just not quite there. So talk to us a little bit about how you kind of from an emotional standpoint, right? Because that's a lot of emotion.
Mhm.
I know myself, I can put myself in the lens of like, feeling like ashamed or God, at this age, I should be at A, or why did I do, been there, done that. So, how do you manage that, Dawn? And what is your style around that for folks?
Well, I think we just have to be supportive and be honest and human beings. And it's a journey. And the journey
Yeah.
sometimes isn't, I drove my car around the block, parked it, and that's it. Sometimes you got to go around the country, to figure it out. And, I think what we do is we don't discourage people. We can't
Right.
tell them lies and we can't not tell them, the facts.
Yeah. Oh,
But
yeah.
once you assess a situation, if there are issues, you look at ways to work around them and or support them no matter how long it takes. And I mean, that's one of the first thing I say, even if you're the strongest credentials on the other end, but you just can't find the right house.
Yeah.
A year approval isn't going to go away in 60 days. I'm just going to update a few documents because we do our full due diligence and it's a real approval, which you need and want for many reasons, which we don't want to, I don't know if you want to hear that here, but they want to be able to make offers when the right homes come along. So the coaching is, if not now, when? And then what do
Yeah,
we need to do to get there? And it's so
that's right.
we can help them, we can guide them. If it's credit issues, we can, recommend things that they can do and or paths to clear that obstacle. If it's a matter, I've had clients I worked with for 3 years that were self-employed and believe it or not, weren't filing taxes. And I
Right.
said, hey, you're going to be able to buy a house, but you got to have 2 years of filed taxes because we have to use it here. So 3 years later, they've got 2 years of taxes and we get them in the home. And ironically, the home for one lady in particular, I'm thinking of, happened to also support her business because she did dog sitting. Instead she had nothing to take up her property, but she had like some kennels available where she could
Yeah.
overnight her furry friends. But yeah, so, sometimes things are more quick than others. Sometimes people are able to find exactly what they want and they find a home in 30 to 60 days. But the average is, 3 months to 6 months, depending on neighborhoods and needs and all that. And then when people have challenges, it's how long does it take to overcome that challenge?
Mhm.
And I'm not going anywhere. So
Mhm.
I'll help them with resources, point them in the right direction. If I can help them quicker rather than later, of course, we'll give them as quick a resource as we can. But sometimes it doesn't work that way. Sometimes there are things that they need to do to put them on the right path, be
Mhm.
able to get to the end result. But we don't leave
Yeah.
them hanging and we're not going anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
We stay in
Totally.
touch, we provide education and counseling as much as we, can for them. But then it ultimately comes down to the client to actually do the work. We can only lead
Yeah.
them. We
Yeah.
can't make them do it.
Right. Of
But when
course.
it does, it's pretty amazing.
Oh, what a
Gives you a
win,
sense
right?
of gratitude that you were able to help somebody do something they never thought they'd be able to do.
You touch on something that is so powerful. We talk about it, I know a lot just amongst our friend circle, colleague circle. We talk about it a ton, and which we'll get to in some of our like commerce community groups like GSBA, the Alliance, Seattle King County Realtors. It's a constant conversation. I just had it deeply with someone last night is, there is no deeper stabilizer of security and confidence than your brick and mortar, than the place you call home. Right? I mean, it is truly like just from a legacy standpoint, from a human standpoint, from a equity standpoint, from an inclusion standpoint. I mean, talk about an uneven playing field. Just the basis of what home means, right, to every individual, and certainly that's a different definition. But at bare bones, it's a sense of knowing, right, a confidence, a safety, a place to land. And I think there are a fair amount of misconceptions. I will just speak from my broker real estate lane hat and my own consumer life, being a person that has gotten a loan and bought a home and had the experience. But I think there's a lot of misconceptions also around all the things, all the check boxes that you have to have. Now, I know that there are many of them that are Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac government law things, and you're the expert on that. And you'll jump in with me here in a minute on that. But talk to us about some of the most common misconceptions, Dawn, that folks have, and maybe it riddles them with so much fear that they don't even pursue it, or they don't even ask their real estate broker who their best advisor is in the lending world. Like what is that sort of
Well,
checklist to
I'll tell
you?
you some of the things that kind of irritate and chap me and misconceptions out there
Oh, and
is
I just wanted to say really quick, I cuss often on Superpower, and it is encouraged wherever you feel passion. So
well, I was
just
gonna say
just
chaps
just
my ass, but
just
I
just
stopped.
just let loose.
Yeah.
We're all good here.
A couple right off the top of mind as you were talking, it immediately came to me that, I really don't like when people are anti-mortgage insurance. There
Mm,
was a time in my career, because I've been doing this a long time, that you wanted to avoid mortgage insurance at all costs because it was really expensive. And why pay $700, $800 more a month when you don't need to? I get the financial piece, but Sometimes people don't have 20% down, and that should not be a deterrent to a path to home ownership. That's why mortgage insurance exists. It provides a protection, a layer of protection for the lenders to say, listen, if they've got all the other, like use your words, proverbial checked boxes, and they meet all the qualifications for insurability of this mortgage insurance, then we should be able to lend to these folks, even if they don't have 20% down. Now, what's happened over the last, I would say, 5 to 7 years, the insurance commissioner, this is going to be boring stuff, has really taken an active part. They monitor and manage mortgage insurance. That's part of that goes under their purview. And mortgage insurance companies have been really impacted by the market, lack of use of it, and other things. So their rates have really come down. Plus, they've had mitigating factors like their risk factors have gone down. So if their risk goes down, meaning the houses are appreciating faster, higher, and building equity sooner, that lowers their risk, they can then afford to lower their premiums because if people aren't making claims on those premiums, they don't need to be as high. When there's a lot
Right.
of claims on those premiums, which is why mortgage insurance used to be so expensive, there were a lot of claims. People were walking away from houses and mortgage insurance companies were closing like crazy. There used to be 100 mortgage insurance companies. Now there's only a
Wow.
handful of reputable good ones. And everybody uses them because they're all on the same playing field. So anyway, I don't mean to get into the weeds on that, but mortgage insurance is not bad and it's never been less expensive. And there's some wealth strategies that I have some very wealthy clients that have utilized over the years. And I'm looking at their things and I can't tell you particulars, but I can use generic
Right.
say, you've got a ton of money in the bank, but you're telling me I only want to put 5 or 10% down because they know a couple things. They're knowledgeable about wealth management, wealth building, financial things. And they're like, one, we don't want to take a capital gains hit by liquidating our stock that could impact our taxes and be bad for us. And two, we know we can make more money on our money working for us in the market at an average yield of 8 to 12% than the cost of lending is. So I want my money to work for me on the wealth building side, and I'm going to let
Mm-hmm.
the wealth building of my real estate build with the equity. And it really has been an aha moment for me in those clients, and it's been a privilege and an amazing thing to see how their gamble or their risk paid off because every single person that has intentionally done that. They could afford 20% down, but they
Yeah.
chose not to. Their equity positions went up hundreds of thousands of dollars, so they were able to drop the mortgage insurance in about 24 months,
Wow.
and it wasn't expensive to begin with. So I'm not an advocate for
Yeah.
mortgage insurance. I don't want anybody to pay a dollar more than they have to, but it can be leveraged to help people.
Mm-hmm.
It can also be leveraged to help people get more of what they want because if they put less money down, they can afford a little more payment and go up a little more and stretch in their house. So it provides you as the realtor and the buyers an opportunity to be able to get more of what they want
Yeah.
and or
Totally.
hold back some money to make it their own and do repair
Right.
things that they want to do. So it's not a bad thing. Okay. I'll
Yeah.
always say
Yeah.
if you want to put 20% down, fantastic, but you
You're
don't
right.
you don't have to. Then on the
Yeah.
flip side, there are those that don't have a choice. They don't have 20%. And
Yep.
there's a cost of waiting. So the longer they have to wait to save that 20%, maybe it takes them 5 years. They missed 5 years of appreciation, which even at a conservative 5% means their money was 25% more powerful 5 years ago when they bought with 3, 3.5, 5, or any number under 20 down with a little bit of affordable mortgage insurance that could then be dropped once their balance was 80% or lower of what the verifiable value of the property is percentage wise. We're going to geek out in
Yeah.
math here.
I love it.
Yeah, so that's an interesting perception.
I'm picking up everything you just threw down. For one, I've heard you educate clients on this exact topic. For two, I've lived it. I've lived it when I was 29 years old, long before I met you, and bought my first house in Madison Valley, brand new construction townhome. I was in this wonderful, great profession called the salon beauty industry. And I was a working girl, right? Just clunking away, taking great care of clients, building a sales business. And I lived exactly what you said. I didn't have the 20% down, but I had a great credit score. I had a great career. I knew I wanted to stop making my landlord rich, and I bought my first house.
You just hit
So,
the nail on the head. Stop
yeah.
making your landlord rich and put your money to work for you.
Yeah, and so you being able to disseminate that with such passion, passion and energy means you give two shits and you really love what you do. At least that's my version of it. And, I didn't have the great support of you then, but I did have a great lender at that time that I partnered with through my sister's referral. And, he really gave me all the same coaching that you just shared, Dawn. And it's so appreciated because that is a huge misconception, right? I could have just kept going on and going on, working hard, doing all the right things, growing a great business, making a fine living for myself, keeping a clean, good credit score, but I just could not quite get to that like 20, 30% down. So it's a real thing.
It
It really
is.
happens.
And the funny thing is that people don't realize that there is a technical term called the cost of waiting. And the cost of waiting can cost you tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. So never pushing anybody into anything, but
Sure.
there is real math. There's quantifiable mathematical calculations you can do to show somebody why buying now with less down is better than waiting. Why buying
Yeah.
in the normal rates that we have, which the world is still adjusting to after 3 years and complaining, even though the rates have been higher for 120 years.
I have a testimonial on that too.
Yeah,
So it's like you can't set this stuff up. So in my real estate broker business, I call it rate amnesia. I need to trademark
oh, I
this.
love that. I'm going to borrow
Rate,
that. Can I borrow
yeah,
that?
you borrow it,
Great
take it, take
amnesia.
it. Rate amnesia because to your point, and for anyone listening that's on the fence and thinking and struggling with this, when I bought that Madison Valley townhome, with all those little positive things that I had set up for my young adult life, guess what my rate was? And
Probably
everybody
seven and a
else's.
half percent, and you probably paid a
It
point to get it.
it was like 8.2.
Oh,
And
there you
so
go.
were all of my counterparts in my age group at that time that had the ability to have the gift, right? It's a gift going back to home. This is not assumed. This is not a step that everybody has the resources or the ability or the access or the availability to do. But my other counterparts that were doing it, that was the rate.
Mhm.
So that's why I call it rate amnesia, right? It's
Yeah.
really our job in this industry to educate and guide folks that yes, who doesn't love a 2 and 3%, right? I mean, when my spouse and I refinanced, we're thank you. We're enjoying it. Trust me, we're enjoying it. It's a good thing. But it has not been the historical norm, and if any of
It
us
was a blip.
has an increment of age on us and has bought real estate back in the day, my second home in the Central District, same thing. I mean, the rate was probably a little lower than that, but I think it's so important on that you're reminding us that this has not been a trend that has been a historical pattern, correct?
Correct. And that's another thing that gets me going, that really chaps me, is there's so much clickbait out there. And every time you hear something about the housing market or news about rates, the rates have already changed 100 times because that information you're seeing on the news was from 3 weeks ago.
Right.
And they're just wanting to get the notice and they want to get their face on TV or have you click on the internet. It kills me. Like, can I give you an example without pontificating?
Please,
Okay.
please. We're here to get
We
educated.
just had a Fed funds rate reduction. And the world would have you think that the second the Fed fund moves, that all interest rates go down overnight by whatever reflection that is, as a quid pro quo. If it was a quarter, it was a quarter. And the rates market doesn't work like that. What gets impacted immediately when the Fed makes a move on the Fed funds rate is short-term interest, adjustable rate interest, home equity lines of credit, car loans, boat loans, adjustable rate mortgages. And then conversely, negatively, what's impacted by that is savings rates. They go down reflective of whatever that is. Money markets go down. The opposite end of the spectrum loses leverage for monies that they have saved. But having said this, what happens is the bond market builds in these presumed predictors of changes a month and weeks in advance of any actual event happening. Then the Fed goes into their blackout period. The market goes crazy. We usually see a dip and followed by a run up, which is exactly what's happened. We had a 3 week dip. I had, some clients that listened to me, some clients that didn't. And I said, you really need to lock and be conservative here. And the ones that did won, and the ones that didn't, the next day after the Fed, they're coming to me as I heard rates were better today. And it's like, no, in fact, they are 0.20% higher because the market did not like the written verbiage and the verbal statements that the Fed made because they weren't in line with what they were hoping for. We were hoping for more generous steps forward in the coming months in 3 to 6 and 12 months. And the Fed is taking a slow and steady approach. And I'm not saying that they're wrong. There is room to make adjustments a little more quickly than they're doing, but why they're doing it and what nobody's talking about, except Barry Habib, who's, in my opinion, the god of mortgage information out there and has won like 4 crystal balls of being right annually for predicting the market and is being considered to be added to the Fed, which I hope he is, because they need a real economist on there, not politicians, is they're telling you that they don't want to make the same mistakes that happened during the financial crisis that led into the trade tariff war with China that led into the pandemic, which is why interest rates for one time in history and one blip that only lasted 3 years happened. And it happened because we had a Fed that moved very aggressively, quickly to the lowest level, meaning taking that Fed funds rate to zero. Okay. And that zero eliminated every percentage of cost. So let's do some simple math. If there's a 3% cost to do business and the Fed funds rate is at 4.5, you would think interest rates are at 7.5, right?
Mm,
Okay, for some, yes, but lenders have cut their costs by decreasing everything, to even taking their margins below their cost level on purchases to close transactions because they need to feed the machine. They need the business, right? But if your interest rate is determined by this, there's a 3% or even a 2% cost spread, and the Fed funds rate is at zero. Now you see how you can have 3% and lower interest rates because
right.
what the Fed funds rate controls is all the daily interchange of money. Meaning when you
Mm,
go to your bank and you pull money out, you go to the ATM, you go to the grocery store and swipe your card, everything. It's the daily interchange cost of money. And then on top of that, lenders and everybody else have costs to do business.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, I didn't mean to get on a soapbox, but that's how interest rate works. So it's really interesting to me to see how there's a level of entitlement where people think that because this one blip in history that's happened, that they're not going to buy a house or do anything because
Yeah.
they deserve this rate. Well, and
Right.
that funds rate's at zero, we all deserve that rate.
Yeah. Right.
Not gonna, it's not gonna get there again, barring any international conflict. I do have to give the justifier that's again,
Well, yeah.
you put boots on the ground, everything, anywhere, it's ever changes everything. So anyway, I'm off my soapbox.
Well, here's the thing. Stay on your soapbox because you are illustrating, this show is all about bringing people in the community forward to talk and share about their skill excellence, their passion, how they're changing people's lives, what they're doing to impact people, how they give back. So we love the soapbox. So don't get off that. But I think you've just beautifully illustrated the technical skill that you have You're great at taking care of clients, building relationships, being that warm community member with sincerity, giving back. But you actually have the street cred of technically knowing how the industry works, how the numbers work, how the Fed works. I mean, that's all Greek to me. That's why I call you, right? If I know one thing at my age today is that I 100% call on my experts when I am not an expert at something, right? That is basic math. So I love hearing your passion and your interest around it. And that's going to tie into my next question.
Right.
I have a list full of them, but I want to hear from you if and just not even overthinking it, just with your illustrious tenure, what is a client situation? Of course, not saying names or addresses. This is just high level giving the overview. What would be a story where you went above and beyond to close a transaction? Or you went above and beyond when all hell was falling apart, shitstorm of a situation, things were not going great. Can you think of a scenario or a time or how you navigated in that heat of the moment, something like that? Because we know for anybody listening, whether you've bought 30 homes or two or never, lots of things are all weighing on that closing date. I mean, there could be a U-Haul truck you paid for. You could have six kids. You're moving from Boston. You could have a sick parent that's coming from Florida. I mean, there are so many things. Well, oh, and by the way, a roof over your head. That's kind of important. So a closing date for a buyer and a seller is this needle intensity timeline, this thing we are all striving for to get it not only right, but to get it on that date. So, Dawn, for you, what is some scenario where because I know you've taken my calls at midnight, you've taken them at 5 a.m., you've calmed me down when I'm hysterical. So, I mean, like I said, I have my own list, but what comes up for you? What prideful moment did you just lean in and go, okay, oh, hell's to the no? Like, we are getting this done, and here's how. Tell me
Well,
about that.
I think it goes back to your team. Like I've worked with the same people. We've been on the same, like I just got my boss just gave me a card that made me cry the other day where he's like, do you realize we've worked together for 12 years? And I just want to say
Mm.
thank you because you know how rare that is. People bounce around all the time. Now we've been at three different companies which have had four different names in that 12-year period. But our team has all stayed together. And when you build these relationships on trust, because you've always delivered quality people into a quality product without issues, when you need to call on your team, I can actually call the CEO of our lending institution, CMG Home Loans, and he will take my call because he knows I'm not calling him unless there's a problem.
Yeah, they're
And
just like,
it
we
doesn't
need
matter
support."
that I didn't create the problem because
Correct.
I'm not going to blame everybody else. But I'm going to say, literally, I don't have a perfect closing record. And anybody that says they do is a liar because I would say that I'm 99.99% perfect.
I
Okay.
can
In
vouch for that.
lending, not in the rest of the world, but in lending. And I have a handful of things that didn't close on time and it wasn't my fault. It was
Mhm.
something else's or another piece of the puzzles issue. And I
Yep.
and I have one recently where I can give you an example where they still gave me a 5 rating because of the
Mm.
relationship that I had built. And the scenario was this. They were overpaying for a home and they knew they were overpaying for a home. And the appraisal came in and the appraisal took a long time because of where the property was located, but they knew that. Okay, it was on an island, so to get an appraiser out there was a nightmare. And they were on a 14-day close, and
Mm.
the appraisal came in like 48 hours before closing, short. And you and I both know you can't send a closing out until there's documents that require a 3-day federal waiting period that start the day you give it. They can't. So what happened is this situation happened. The appraisal came in, and all you're communicating the whole time with the agent. You're communicating with the buyers, and in this perspective, this is a trippy situation. The sellers were regretting selling the house because they didn't need the money. It was their family vacation home, and they didn't need the money. And they're grown, retired folks whose grown children then got angry at them for selling the house. So they were actually looking to back out of the deal. Whereas my buyers were like, we knew we were overpaying for it, and financially, we were already ready. We were already ready for a short appraisal. We had them, even though it wasn't, we never talked about it in the sense of, hey, what are we going to do as a contingency? Because, we always have to say, hey, sometimes that's a conversation you have, but in this one, they knew it. So they already had the money. And the minute I called him and told him what happened, he didn't even blink. He said, no problem. I'll call my broker. We're still paying it. And the seller on the other end was trying to back out of the deal because his kids were giving him a hard time. So the agent, who didn't know me, because my clients had chosen an agent that didn't know me, but we got to know each other, and I are on the phone with these people going, we're going to, I'm pulling every string behind the scenes to get docs out, and make all this revised numbers, everything happened, boom, like we just went right to this CD and docs. And I'm like, hey, docs are at escrow. You've got a large deposit on escrow. We are only asking for 72 hours to be in federal compliance. And there was a caveat within the contract. I think I even called you on that to get a second opinion on the clause. And to say, hey, we can execute on this clause. We've never had to do it before, but you have to give us 5 days. It's right here in the contract, but we'll be closed before that. Because then the other thing was the Friday, the county where that property is was closed. So we would have closed on the Friday, but we had to wait till Monday because the county wasn't even open. So anyway, that happened in the last few months, but the client couldn't be happier. They knew they wanted this house for months. They were trying to get it at a deal that never happened, and they knew the potential value. The only reason it didn't appraise is because there had been limited sales and a couple of lower sales that were negatively
Yeah.
impacting them, but the property was worth what they were paying for it. They just needed the comps to close. They were pending things and, listings and stuff. Anyway,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was a great accomplishment. But this is just an example of, excuse shit you can't control, but you have
Right.
to roll with it. And it's how do you, in those stressful moments, how do you deal with problems and adversity? How I
Hmm.
deal with it. And I mean, I've come to this level. I used to be more of a spaz, but now I'm a little older, so I hope I'm a little bit calmer, even though I'm still a spaz. Is you don't panic. You stay honest, you assess the situation, and you say, what can I do? And then you pull every resource that you never need to pull except when you need that ace in the hole card, and you do. And they're all there for you working double overtime. I'm like I
Yeah.
said, president of the company, vice president, picking up the phone saying, we got you. I'm going to pull my
Hmm.
best person on it right now. We got you. We're putting you ahead of, boom. And you just
Yeah.
get it done and you make it happen. So
You
here's
make it
a
work.
situation where I had built a relationship, and this was a client referral from another longtime client. They're very good friends. And I'd done many transactions for the other friend. By staying honest, by addressing everything, boom, 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 having a contingency plan with extra money, in the thing, everybody was happy, even in a bad situation. Now,
Yeah.
my hair is platinum, but it was turning white, in the process. I'm sure I had some whites come through. You just can't see them. It was not an ideal, happy situation. And these are not conversations you want to be having at 8, 9, and 10 o'clock at night when you're tired and you want to go to bed. But this is part of the special sauce. These are the
Yeah.
things that the computer's not going to give you. These
Right.
are any fintech company or any online company would have been like, deal dead, bye, Felicia, you're out. You did done. No, but you're pulling in all your resources, favors from friends, just like when you need, a favor and you're calling me and it's not my deal, but I'm helping you figure it out. We work
Hmm.
together, to help each other. So I guess the thing is that there's going to be challenges, how you address and deal with those challenges, and then just staying communicative, honest, and open lines of communication with
Yeah.
all parties, and using your resources to to make it right, to figure it out. There was a little financial impact to that client as well because of a lock-in thing. And then we paid for it. We made him whole. We lost money on the deal, but
Mm.
we still finished our commitment with no damage financially to the client. We even give a closing guarantee where if we don't close on anything that is our fault, we'll give them $2,000 for closing costs.
Mm.
But I don't think we've ever had to use that because usually
Yeah,
these problems, and I'm not saying, oh, we're so perfect. We are pretty damn good. But, usually when there's an issue, it's because of some outside thing that you can't
yeah,
control or somebody else. It's not
that's
us
right.
delivering because one thing why I work where I do and with the people that I do is because when I need them to make something happen for somebody, I can't bend the rules and change the law, but
Yep.
they are there to help me deliver.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
you have to, it's all about delivering and the end result, the journey to get there, and then the finished product, and then being available after, and what happens later. Like that's an example of a stressful, oh shit time.
Yeah, yeah,
And fortunately we don't have a lot of those, thankfully.
right.
But I even had a time, oh my gosh, I'm going back like over 10 years. I have to get the exact date, but uh we signed the documents the day before closing, and then the Fed was closed the next day. Like the Fed, they had been hacked. Like there was a hack that happened to the Fed, and no wires could get to them for 24 hours, and the contract date was that day. So, you know, it was a stressful time for the buyers. They were first time home buyers, but they didn't do anything. The Fed was literally closed. So the seller gave them a day extension. We'd sent the wire, but it couldn't go through or be received because all of New York, where all banking goes through, the Fed back east, was shut down for 24 hours.
Those are really great examples because to your point, it's all about keeping intelligence high and emotion low, right? To the
Yeah.
best of our ability. I
We
mean,
might be
and
drinking a bottle of wine with a straw later, but during the process,
hey,
you never let them see you sweat. Inside your
exactly.
internal dialogue is oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. But with the client, you're just
Yeah,
supportive,
yeah,
nurturing, honest, direct, communicative,
yeah.
and working through it. And I
And
think
getting it done. Yeah. And I've been on the other end of that.
yeah, both sides of the fence, I think that's part of a secret sauce.
Yeah.
You can't take that human component out as much as they try to.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, and that is the point of difference. That is the secret sauce, like you said, that you bring to everything that you do because you move mountains to make it happen. There are just two more questions. I do not
Okay.
want to shut this down without getting them in, but we will make them concise because I just know how important it is to you. I've seen it in action. It's actually how I met you. So, for those tuning in, share with us your community outreach, your heart to give, your commitment to it, be it being members and a part of various organizations, giving at fundraisers, causes. 2 minutes. Just tell us a little bit about those
Uh,
organizations or why you do it, why you're moved to do it, why it's such a big part of your life and your business, Dawn.
well, I'll tell you because my life was impacted in the sense of my career to a point was closeted, and I was forced to not be my true authentic self, be conservative with my words because it could mean that people wouldn't want to do business with me because I'm a gay person, you know? And so I was 35 years old. I walked out of a totaled car accident, and it was an aha, epiphany, life-changing moment. I got out of a relationship I was in to a dear friends and love to this day, the person, but we wanted different things. I wanted a family. She did not. I changed companies because I was working too hard for too many hours and not having a life balance. And just said, I will live my true, authentic self going forward. And if anybody doesn't like it, then they don't need to work with me. That's the choice I have to make from this point forward. And I took a stand and I did, and it sent me on a trajectory that led me to try to find support within our community because there's lots of other people in all industries, whether you're a plumber, electrician, insurance agent, real estate agent, whatever, we all have this issue. And I found the GSBA, the Gay Straight Business Alliance. And so I joined and became a member. And you and I knew each other in the periphery of lots of people. We knew each other, and I was dear friends with your wife for a long time when we were younger. And thankfully, because of you, are good friends again. And you just get you're moved to action within your community because you see that you don't want anybody to be treated differently for their affinity groups, for who they are as people, and you just want to try to level the playing field. So I
Mm.
first got involved in GSBA, and that's when you and I met, and I welcomed you in, and then we built a phenomenal relationship and family connection, sisterhood forward. And then you brought me into, well, I didn't even know it existed. You brought me into the other side of the Agents Real Estate Alliance, the LGBTQI plus TIA plus alliance, to help me network with agents that were similar in the community and or allies. And
Mm.
so what people have to realize is there's still discrimination that goes on today. And there's still mistreatment, there's still unfairness, people not accepting offers because of perceived, I don't want these people to have my house or whatever. And, our job is to make the playing field level, I believe, for everybody. And I have gotten affinity relationship discounts for both of my groups that I just mentioned from my company, where we put our money where our mouth is. The only thing we get in a transaction is like a $1,600 underwriting everything fee. I mean, we don't charge for anything extra. That is something that we need to do the loan. Okay. And we give a $1,200 credit to anybody that's a GSBA member or a real estate alliance to kind of try to offset that financially. But then, most
Yeah.
importantly, so that every person, no matter how they identify, who they are, what their family construct is, or anything at all, never feels other in our real estate transaction from the lending side or the real estate side.
Yeah.
And so as you get older, what I've learned, and one of the things that I value and I'm trying to build even more, is that the world is a straight world. Okay. So we have to support each other and build each other and lift each other up. Why shouldn't we have a group that helps support each other?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
I need work on my house, I'm going to go to the directory and see who's a licensed professional in that entity to help me. I'm going to
Mhm.
support them because maybe somebody else isn't calling them because of their perceived, who they are. And,
Bias or yeah.
yeah, perceived bias, or not to get political, but just to say that as you age, you realize how important helping connect community and
Yeah.
choosing to work with people in the straight world that are allies and
That's
that do
right.
support who you are and your family
Mhm.
construct and what you represent without judgment. We're all just
Yeah.
human beings, and that's we should be, I think it was MLK said, we should be measured by the content of our character,
Yeah.
and I try to live my life through that as well. And so,
Wonderful, wonderful perspective. And thank you so much for the work that you do, the contributions you make. You give freely, you say yes freely. This has been such an exciting time to sit down with you. I learned so much, Dawn, about you and just affirming things that, and feelings that you have and things you've gone through, things you've learned. So I'm so grateful for this time. And we do close down every single superpower episode asking if you had to choose one superpower that you get up and lean in on every day, what would that superpower be?
ooh, that's a tough one. I don't know. I think human connection,
Mm,
because it's a lonely world without it. And I think it's what makes us all tick.
Absolutely. Well, I agree. You've got that down and then some, and we're better for it. I'm grateful for it. Thank you for all the support and the guidance you've brought not only to our family, but our family business and our friendships. And thank you so much for being on the show today.
It's been an honor, and you know how I hate to be in front of a camera, and you made it easy because I feel like I'm just sitting here talking to you. I don't feel like too nervous, although on the inside, my inner dialogue might be going, oh shit.
Thank you again, Dawn, and we'll have you back because there's lots we didn't cover. Appreciate you.
Have a great day. Cheers.
Thanks so much for joining me for this episode. If you enjoyed it, I hope you'll make it easy for others to enjoy it too. You can do that by subscribing, writing a review, and sharing episode links with others. Then you'll be my superhero.